Massachusetts Republicans are flush with confidence these days, buoyed by Scott Brown's Senate win and the prospect of retaking the governor's office. They were confident in 2004, too, when then-Governor Mitt Romney tried to roll back Democratic dominance on Beacon Hill. That year, the GOP lost seats, but Republicans say this fall will be different. The state Republican convention in Worcester was a coronation for Charlie Baker, where he easily won his party's endorsement for governor, avoiding a primary challenge from rival Christy Mayos.
If you believe, like me, that Massachusetts cannot afford 4 more years of tax and spend mediocrity, that you, the people of this great state, deserve a far more affordable, accountable, and responsive state government than the one you've got now, then you should vote for me. I'm your guy.
Some lesser-known candidates also tapped into the party's new energy. State Representative Karen Polito, who's running for state treasurer, says there's reason to run in the footsteps of GOP darling Senator Scott Brown.
Scott Brown is very much a person that, like me, understood in his core that there was something going on among the people.
Even those candidates less inclined to emulate Brown, like Brett Schetzel, a state rep candidate from Beverly, agree Brown's win bears a crucial lesson.
That's the one thing that Senator Brown showed us, was that there's nothing more powerful than having the right message on the right issues at the right time. And I think we truly do have that this year.
And Schetzel says the contrast between this year and 2004, when state Republicans made a big push to gain ground, is stark.
I think the major difference between 2004 and 2010 is going to be where the momentum is coming from, or where the push is coming from. I think in 2004 it was coming from the top down, from Governor Romney, and I think this year it truly is coming from the local levels.
Whether that difference will actually mean wins this November is an open question. But for now, the Massachusetts GOP is downright bullish about its prospects. All right, and joining me are WGBH's Adam Riley and GOP congressional candidate Jon Golnik, who is running against Nikki Tsongas in the 5th District. Welcome. So, Adam, gave up a beautiful rainy Saturday to attend the Republican State Convention. This is sort of like the old-fashioned style conventions where stuff really happened and people got riled up.
Yeah, compared to some of the national conventions I've seen, it was very interesting because there was the question about whether Christy Mayos was going to make the ballot. If he had, I think he would have made life very difficult for Charlie Baker. Mayos ended up not making the ballot. And yeah, the sense of energy was really palpable. I mean, you get the impression that state Republicans are very confident that they're going to pick up seats in November, and also that they are sort of experiencing firsthand the reinvention of what it means to be a Massachusetts Republican. That was palpable all across the convention hall on Saturday.
You're running against Nikki Tsongas in the 5th. Right now, our congressional delegation is all Democratic. We have a senator in the Democratic and the Republican Party for the first time. Talk a little bit about how you felt energized by this gathering, and was there a unified message that everybody is on here?
You know, I think that there was a lot of energy there, and I think that this is largely being driven by Scott Brown's election back in January. I think that Scott Brown's election proved to voters for the first time in a long time that their vote does count, that they can have their voice heard, because I think a lot of voters right now are feeling disenfranchised, feeling that they don't have a voice. So it was an exciting place to be.
The Scott Brown coattails, I mean, a lot of things converged to make that happen. You know, there was the candidacy of Martha Coakley that was going nowhere, and she was, sort of roundly criticized and ridiculed in the end for running a terrible campaign, sort of a monotone, visionless campaign in some regards. Scott Brown, the barn jacket, the handsome, he had the health care issue, the health care bill issue to grab onto. I mean, it's not so easy just to ride onto somebody's coattails.
No, it isn't, and people like to ask me if I'm a Scott Brown Republican, and my answer to that is I'm a Jon Golnik Republican. The Republican Party is a broad tent. I don't think that there's any Republican that will agree with any other Republican on every single issue, and so I tell people that I'm going to run my own race, and the most important thing that I'm going to focus on is listening to the people.
It's worth noting that a lot of candidates, including I believe you, in fact I'm sure you, who I talked to in Worcester, had made the decision to run before Scott Brown's win, which I think to my mind, makes it more credible, the argument that there is really something afoot here, that there's some sort of a grassroots foment going on. If you, had just decided to run because Scott Brown got in and you thought you could give it a shot, then it would seem to me like sort of a knee-jerk reactive phenomenon. But that's not what's happening.
Well, and it was interesting because I actually started this process. I didn't enter this impetuously. I started it a little less than 2 years ago. I did a lot of researched into the district, into the election trends in the district. I went down to Washington, D.C. in August.
She was only elected, 18 months ago or something? So.
Right. Right, and I had done and she ran unopposed in the 2008 cycle, but I had talked to the National Republican Party down in Washington in August, and then I went ahead and I started putting together my campaign, my group that would run my campaign in September. So we felt somewhat vindicated by Scott Brown's election because our point was something was going on in Massachusetts, and that we felt that there was an opportunity here.
Adam, I'm curious about the kind of Tea Party presence there, because you were telling me that a lot of people that were young and organized, but according to that study that just came out last week, most of the Tea Party people are over 45, white male, wealthier. But that's not necessarily the new Republican.
I don't think that's it across the board. One guy who I think is representative of the Tea Party strain, sort of having an effect on the broader GOP. I shouldn't say the broader GOP, on the GOP. Is Kamal Jain, who's running for state auditor against Mary Connaughton, who's sort of a woman who came up in the state Republican establishment. Jain is he used to be a libertarian. He is endorsed by Ron Paul. He's a big Tea Party fan, and he managed to get the 15% necessarily to get on the ballot. Now, I'm not expecting him to beat Mary Connaughton. He has a very, very tough road to hoe there, but he sees himself and candidates like him as sort of bringing the Massachusetts Republican Party back to where it should be, bringing it away from a willingness to support big government programs, making it more conservative fiscally, and in some cases socially also.
John, where do you see yourself fitting in with the whole Tea Party structure? Anyway?
I tell everyone that I'm willing to go and talk to any group, and my message isn't going to change to whatever group I'm talking to. So I was at the Tea Party event in Boston. I was at the Tea Party event in Lowell. I've spoken at some Tea Party events as well. I mean, I think that the Tea Party, that what the media thinks of it aside, I think it's an organization that is a good organization because it's bringing people into the political process.
You mean the media doesn't think much of it?
That's my general impression, yes. But I do think that the Tea Party is bringing people who have up until now not been involved in the political process, and that's good for democracy. That's good for us.
Coming out of this convention, I guess I was a little surprised, Adam, that Charlie Baker was immediately talking about Tim Cahill as opposed to Governor Deval Patrick, who is more likely to be his primary opponent, let's face it.
That's true, but Charlie Baker needs to shore up his base before he can worry about Deval Patrick. And right now, Tim Cahill is making really, really serious inroads into the conservative base. Cahill has been assiduously wooing sort of the Tea Party movement types, running to the right of Baker on a lot of issues, and he's doing it extremely effectively. I mean, there was a poll that came out, a Western New England college poll that was taken prior to the GOP convention, so Baker probably got a bounce. But it showed Baker trailing both Cahill and Patrick. I believe among registered voters it was 34% support for Patrick, 29% for Cahill, and 27% for Baker. Now, that would probably be different if you took that same poll today because of all the visibility that Baker's had recently. But Cahill, he's not just a Ross Perot figure. I mean, he's a real threat to take the governor's office.
It's interesting that all these big-name Republicans, Charlie Baker, and all the governors that we've had here have had the fiscally conservative, socially kind of moderate, or even almost liberal. Charlie Baker is the same on that issue. Does that matter to the true dyed-in-the-wool Republicans?
I think that this year's elections are going to be pocketbook issues. I mean, sure, there are going to be those issues are going to matter to a segment of the Republican Party. But our campaign is focusing on jobs. We think our message cuts across the political spectrum. As I said earlier, we'll go and we'll talk to anybody who wants to listen to us.
All right. We're looking forward to hosting a debate right here between you and Nikki Tsongas.
Great. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Jon Golnik and Adam Riley, thank you so much.
Thank you.